Jim Neidhart was one of wrestling's most intense characters, whose menacing laugh and powerhouse style made him the perfect tag team partner for Bret the Hitman Hart. He went from being a record-breaking shot-put athlete to becoming one of WWE's most memorable big men, throwing opponents around like ragdolls while rocking his iconic pink and black attire. However, in 2018, the Anvil would fall and never rise again. James Henry Neidhart was born on February 8, 1955 in Montebello, California. The first signs of his special talent showed up on his high school track field. Picture a young Jim walking up to throw the shot put with everyone watching quietly. What he did that day was amazing. He threw the shot put so far that he broke the California state record. His throw was so good that no one could beat it for 12 whole years at Newport Harbor High School. This wasn't just luck. Jim had the kind of raw strength that would make him famous later in life. But Jim's athletic ambitions initially led him down a different path. With his impressive strength and natural athleticism, the NFL came calling. In 1978, he found himself wearing the silver and black of the Oakland Raiders, a team known for taking chances on unique talents. When that door closed, another opened with the Dallas Cowboys. The football dream seemed within reach, but fate had other plans. Sometimes the most important moments in life come disguised as disappointments. While Jim's NFL career didn't materialize as he hoped, his remarkable physical prowess caught the eye of someone who would change his life forever. Wrestling promoter Stu Hart, a legendary figure in professional wrestling, saw something special in this powerful young athlete. Hart had an uncanny ability to spot diamond in the rough talent, and in Jim, he saw unlimited potential waiting to be unleashed in the wrestling ring. Those early years of shot-put competitions and football training weren't wasted time. His explosive strength, developed through years of athletic training, would soon find a new home in the world of professional wrestling, where raw power met showmanship in perfect harmony. Inside a Calgary basement, a place that would change wrestling forever, future stars learned their craft through pain and sweat. They called it the Hart Dungeon, and it wasn't your average wrestling school. When Stu Hart invited Jim to train there, no one knew this basement would completely change his life's path. The dungeon was brutal, and everyone knew it. Under the Hart family's house, wrestlers learned the hard way. Through real holds and genuine fighting moves, people in the neighborhood could hear yelling from that basement, and soon Jim's voice joined the mix. But while others just tried to survive the training, Jim actually got better and stronger. Yet Jim found more than just wrestling skills in Calgary. Between the tough training sessions with Stu Hart, he caught the eye of Stu's daughter Ellie. They clicked right away. Ellie knew wrestling inside and out. She'd watched her dad train wrestlers her whole life. They fell in love while Jim learned wrestling moves, their story playing out in the most unlikely of places. Their wedding in 1979 wasn't just about love. It joined Jim to wrestling's royal family. The strong guy from California was now part of the Hart clan, a family that had shaped wrestling for years and would keep doing so for many more. But getting married to Ellie would lead to something even bigger in Jim's wrestling career. Joining the Hart family opened doors Jim never expected. As he got better at wrestling and grew closer to the Harts, something big was brewing. A partnership that would shake up wrestling was just around the corner. Jim didn't know it yet, but his biggest moment in wrestling was coming, and it would change everything. At the legendary Calgary Stampede, Stu Hart saw a chance to turn his son-in-law into something special. The yearly festival wasn't just about cowboys and rides, it featured unique contests that celebrated raw strength. Among them was the Anvil toss, a challenge that would change Jim's wrestling identity forever. Stu pulled Jim aside with an offer that showed just how clever he was at building stars. $500 waited for Jim if he could not only compete in, but win the Anvil toss. In the 1970s, that kind of money turned heads. But more importantly, Stu knew a victory here would give Jim something priceless, a character that fans would never forget. The day of the competition arrived with the summer sun beating down on the Stampede grounds. As Jim stepped up to throw, the crowd grew quiet. The Anvil, weighing more than most men could lift, sat waiting. In a display of pure power that left spectators slack-jawed, Jim launched the massive piece of metal an incredible 11 feet 2 inches through the air. The victory did more than just pad Jim's wallet. It gave birth to a wrestling identity that would stick with him for life. The Animal, his previous nickname, didn't quite capture what fans had just witnessed, but the Anvil, that told the whole story. It painted a picture of raw strength, blue-collar toughness, and the kind of power that could make even a seasoned strongman step back in awe. Stu's gamble paid off brilliantly. In one afternoon, Jim wasn't just another wrestler anymore, he was the Anvil. a name that would echo through wrestling arenas for years to come. The nickname fit him perfectly, capturing both his incredible strength and his connection to the hardy spirit of Calgary, a city built on grit and determination. In 1985, wrestling's landscape was changing fast, and one man stood at the center of it all: Vince McMahon. His World Wrestling Federation wasn't content staying regional anymore. Like a hungry shark, McMahon was swimming into new territories, gobbling up talent wherever he found it, and his eyes had locked onto two promising stars in Calgary. Jim and Bret Hart might have seemed like an odd match at first glance. One was a powerhouse who could toss anvils for fun, the other a technical master who could tie opponents in knots. But sometimes the best combinations are the ones that don't make sense on paper. McMahon saw something special in this unlikely duo, a perfect blend of power and precision that could revolutionize tag team wrestling. Enter Jimmy Hart, the megaphone-wielding manager known as the Mouth of the South. His addition to the mix was like throwing gasoline on an already hot fire. The decision to put him with Bret and Jim wasn't just smart, it was genius. Here was a mouthpiece who could rile up crowds while two of wrestling's finest talents did what they did best in the ring. The Hart Foundation wasn't just another tag team, they were a statement. In their pink and black gear, they stood out immediately. Jim's raw power complemented Bret's technical wizardry like peanut butter and jelly, creating a combination that would write their names in wrestling's history books. Looking back, it's clear that 1985 wasn't just another year in Jim's career. It was the moment everything changed. The Hart Foundation would go on to become one of wrestling's most decorated and remembered tag teams, proving that sometimes the best decisions in wrestling aren't just about individual talent, but about finding the perfect chemistry between partners. Inside the WWF's squared circle, something special was brewing. The Hart Foundation wasn't just another tag team, they were revolutionizing how tag team wrestling looked. When Bret Hart moved like a surgeon in the ring, carefully taking apart his opponents, Jim was there to shake the ropes and send them flying with explosive power. It was like watching a chess master team up with a wrecking ball. Their matches against the British Bulldogs wrote a new chapter in wrestling history. Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid weren't just opponents, they were the perfect rivals. All four men knew each other from the Hart Dungeon days, and it showed in the ring. These weren't just matches, they were violent ballet performances that left crowds breathless. Every lockup told a story, every counter-move had meaning, and when these teams clashed, magic happened. February 7th, 1987, that's when everything changed. On an episode of Superstars of Wrestling, the Hart Foundation finally struck gold. The night they took the tag team titles from the British Bulldogs wasn't just a victory, it was a coronation. The pink and black attack had arrived at the top of the mountain, and they weren't planning to leave anytime soon. For nearly a year, they dominated the tag team scene. The Killer Bees brought their quick strikes and double-team moves, but the Foundation had an answer. The young stallions charged in with youthful energy, only to be taught harsh lessons by the champions. Strikeforce thought they had the formula figured out, but Bret and Jim proved them wrong time and again. Each successful defense added new wrinkles to their game. Bret would soften up opponents with his technical mastery, while Jim stalked the ring like a caged animal, waiting to unleash his power. Their opponents never knew which was worse, getting caught in Bret's sharpshooter or being on the receiving end of Jim's devastating power slam. This wasn't just a championship reign, it was a masterclass in tag team wrestling that teams would study for generations to come. When the summer heat of 1988 rolled in, wrestling fans witnessed a clash of titans that shook the ring posts. Demolition wasn't just any tag team, they were walking wrecking machines in face paint and spikes. When they locked up with the Hart Foundation at SummerSlam, the ring could barely contain the explosion of power. Jim, refusing to back down, went chest to chest with axe and smash, proving he could throw down with wrestling's most feared powerhouses. But it was their battles with the Rockers that showed wrestling fans something they didn't expect. Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty moved like lightning and flew through the air like they had wings. Most big men would have been left in the dust, but Jim showed he had more tricks up his sleeve than anyone knew. The Anvil, all 280 pounds of him, adapted his style on the fly. He'd catch the Rockers mid-flight, turn their own momentum against them, yet still keep up with their fast-paced attack. These matches across 89 and 90 weren't just great wrestling, they were proof that Jim was something special. While other power wrestlers stuck to their usual playbook, Jim showed he could wrestle any style thrown at him. One night he'd be trading power moves with giants, the next he'd be catching high flyers and matching speed with wrestling's quickest stars. In the ring with the Rockers, Jim revealed layers to his wrestling that nobody saw coming. He didn't just rely on raw strength anymore, he showed timing, agility, and ring smarts that surprised everyone. When Michaels or Jannetty came flying off the top rope, the Anvil was ready with perfect positioning and split-second timing. These weren't just matches, they were showcases of how a true ring veteran could evolve and adapt. Through these feuds, the Anvil proved what old-school wrestling fans had always known. Size and power were just part of his arsenal. Whether it was surviving Demolition's assault or keeping pace with the Rocker's high-speed attacks, Jim showed that a true wrestling great could do it all. His ability to adapt while staying true to his power-based core made these matches classics that fans still talk about today. The wrestling world sizzled as the Hart Foundation's war with Jimmy Hart's crew reached fever pitch. Their old manager had become their worst enemy, and every match felt personal. At the '89 Royal Rumble, they found an unlikely partner in Jim Duggan, the patriotic powerhouse whose voice echoed through arenas. Together, they faced off against the ruthless combo of Dino Bravo and the Rougeau brothers in a match that had fans on their feet. 2 out of 3 Falls matches were wrestling's ultimate test of endurance and skill. It wasn't enough to get 1 pin. You needed 2. When the dust settled, the Hart Foundation and Duggan stood tall, proving that sometimes the good guys do win. The victory sent a message. The pink and black attack wasn't just surviving, they were thriving. WrestleMania 5 brought another challenge, the Honky Tonk Man and Greg Valentine. This wasn't just any match, this was wrestling's biggest stage. The Hart Foundation rose to the occasion, adding another win to their impressive record. But behind the scenes, changes were brewing. Both Bret and Jim were starting to eye something new, singles glory. House shows became testing grounds for both men's solo careers. While fans knew them as tag team specialists, these matches showed different sides of both wrestlers. Jim, in particular, caught everyone's attention. The Anvil wasn't content with just tag team success, he wanted more. His eyes locked onto Rick Rude's Intercontinental Championship, and suddenly, the powerhouse who'd made his name throwing anvils was hunting for singles gold. The matches against Rude showed a different side of Jim. The Ravishing One was known for his technical skill and ring psychology, forcing the Anvil to dig deep into his wrestling toolbox. These weren't just matches, they were proof that Jim could hang with the best singles competitors in the business. Every near fall and close call had fans believing the Anvil might just capture gold on his own. Los Angeles Sports Arena, WrestleMania 7, 1991. Wrestling's biggest night was about to turn ugly. A year earlier, the Hart Foundation had steamrolled the Bolsheviks in record time. But tonight they faced something different, the street-tough Nasty Boys, a team that didn't just bend the rules, they broke them with a smile. The match was like watching a car crash in slow motion. The Nasty Boys brought their garbage can style of wrestling, turning the ring into a war zone. Knobs and Sags weren't interested in technical wrestling, they wanted to hurt people. The Hart Foundation tried to keep it clean, showcasing their signature moves and teamwork, but sometimes nice guys finish last. When Jerry Sags pulled out that motorcycle helmet, everything changed. The referee was distracted, focusing on the wrong corner at exactly the wrong moment. The crack of metal on flesh echoed through the arena as the helmet connected with Jim's skull. The Anvil, for all his power and toughness, couldn't overcome physics and steel. He dropped like a stone. Brian Knobbs, grinning like a kid who'd just gotten away with stealing cookies, made the cover. The referee's hand hit the mat 3 times, and just like that, the Hart Foundation's reign was over. The Nasty Boys celebrated like they'd won clean, but everyone knew better. That motorcycle helmet had written a new chapter in tag team history, even if it wasn't the ending most fans wanted. This wasn't just any title change, it marked the end of an era. The Hart Foundation had carried the tag team division with class and skill. Now the belts sat around the waists of 2 brawlers who'd stolen them with a foreign object. Wrestling could be cruel that way, but sometimes the dirtiest players drew the biggest cards. The Los Angeles crowd sat in shocked silence, watching as the Nasty Boys paraded around with their ill-gotten gains, while Jim and Hart were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered championship dreams. The early 90s didn't just mark the end of the Hart Foundation's championship runs, they cemented their place as pioneers who changed tag team wrestling forever. Like master artists who left their mark on every canvas they touched, Bret and Jim had painted a new picture of what tag team wrestling could be. Watch any Hart Foundation match, and you'd see the blueprint they created. It wasn't just about Bret's technical wizardry or Jim's raw power anymore, it was the way they wove these elements together. When Jim would catch a flying opponent and turn them into a power slam, it wasn't just a move, it was poetry in pink and black. The way Bret would soften up an opponent's leg before the Anvil would come in to finish the job, That wasn't just strategy, it was storytelling that fans could feel in their bones. Those pink and black tights became more than just wrestling gear. In a world of neon colors and wild patterns, the Hart Foundation's look stood out by being sharp and professional. Every time they stepped through the curtain, they looked like they meant business. That image of professionalism and skill became their calling card, inspiring a whole generation of wrestlers to take their craft just as seriously. But perhaps their greatest gift to wrestling was their versatility. One night they could slug it out with powerhouses like Demolition. The next they could keep pace with high flyers like the Rockers. They proved that a great tag team didn't need to be one-dimensional. This adaptability set a new standard. To be the best, you had to be able to wrestle anyone, anywhere, any style. Years later, when fans would watch new tag teams rise through the ranks, they'd see pieces of the Hart Foundation's influence. The way teams worked together, timing of their moves, psychology of their matches, all of it carried echoes of what Bret Hart and Jim had built together. They hadn't just been champions, they'd been teachers, showing everyone who followed them what tag team wrestling could be. Inside the WWF's ever-changing landscape, Jim found himself at a crossroads after 1991. The Hart Foundation might have been done, but the Anvil wasn't finished. When he joined forces with Owen Hart, Bret's high-flying younger brother, fans got excited. Here was a fresh take on a winning formula. The power of the Anvil matched with Owen's incredible aerial skills. The new foundation hit the ground running with a fresh look and attitude, gone were the pink and black tights, replaced with a more colorful style that matched the early 90s vibe. But keeping up with teams like the Natural Disasters wasn't easy. Earthquake and Typhoon brought the kind of raw power that even Jim had to respect, leading to battles that shook rings across the country. The Beverly Brothers provided a different kind of challenge. Bo and Blake Beverly were technically sound and loved to bend the rules when refs weren't looking. New Foundation's matches with them showed flashes of brilliance, moments where it seemed like Owen and Jim might capture the same magic that made the original Hart Foundation special. But wrestling's a funny business, and sometimes things just don't click the way you hope. Despite Owen's incredible talent and Jim's proven track record, the new foundation never quite caught fire like its predecessor. The chemistry was there, the timing wasn't. When February 15th, 1992 rolled around, nobody knew they were watching the team's final match together. The new foundation's short run became one of wrestling's what-if stories. The pieces were all there. Owen's skill, Jim's power, their family connection, but sometimes even the most promising combinations need more than just talent to succeed. That final match marked not just the end of a team, but the close of another chapter in Jim's ever-evolving career in the squared circle. 1992 hit like a tornado backstage at WWF. When faced with a mandatory drug test, Jim made a choice that would change everything. The Anvil, known for his explosive power in the ring, let that same intensity spill over behind the scenes. The image of a television monitor flying through the air became his unexpected farewell to the company that had made him famous. But wrestlers don't stay down for long. Jim hit the independent scene like a man with something to prove. Small towns, high school gyms, anywhere there was a ring, and fans who wanted to see the Anvil in action. These weren't the big arenas he was used to, but they kept his skills sharp and his name alive in wrestling. 1993 brought new opportunities when WCW came calling. The company needed established stars, and Jim brought name value and real wrestling credentials. His matches with Sting showed he could hang with the best. The Stinger might have been WCW's franchise player. Jim gave him all he could handle, proving the Anvil wasn't just a tag team specialist. The feud with Rick Rude felt personal, like unfinished business from their WWF days. These weren't tag matches anymore. There was nowhere to hide and nobody to tag. Just two veterans trading moves and telling stories in the ring. Jim showed that his power game worked just as well in singles competition, even against one of wrestling's most technically gifted performers. This chapter in WCW painted a different picture of the Anvil. Without the Hart Foundation name or the pink and black gear, he stood on his own. Every power slam and every victory was his alone, proving that while tag team wrestling made him famous, it wasn't the only thing he could do. The man who once tossed anvils for money was now throwing his weight around in a new territory, writing his own story one match at a time. Back in the WWF, 1994 brought a twist nobody saw coming. The Anvil wasn't just back, he was back with a grudge. When he sided with Owen Hart against Bret, fans couldn't believe it. The man who'd been Bret's partner and brother-in-law was now standing against him, smirking alongside the younger Hart brother in one of wrestling's most personal feuds. King of the Ring became the stage for family drama turned violent. In one corner stood Bret and his loyal ally, the British Bulldog. In the other, Owen and Jim, Former friends turned bitter enemies. The match wasn't just about winning, it was about family pride and betrayal. Every move carried extra weight, every taunt cut deeper, because these men knew each other so well. The Anvil showed a nastier side that night. Gone was the lovable powerhouse who dominated with Bret. In his place stood a meaner, more vicious version of Jim. He didn't just want to beat Bret, he wanted to hurt him. Each power move came with added spite, each taunt designed to get under the hitman's skin. Working as a heel against Bret brought out something new in Jim's performance. He knew all of Bret's moves, all his tendencies, and he used that knowledge against him. The same power game that had once backed up Bret's technical skills was now being used to tear him down. It wasn't just good wrestling, it was great storytelling. Wrestling runs on emotion, and this match had it in spades. The sight of Jim, once Bret's trusted partner, now trying to destroy him, added layers of drama that went beyond simple good guy versus bad guy. It proved the Anvil could play either side of the fence convincingly, making fans hate him just as easily as they'd once loved him. In 1997, wrestling caught fire in a way nobody expected. The Hart Foundation wasn't just back, they were different. Meaner, prouder. Standing tall with Canadian flags, they turned their backs on American fans while being heroes back home. Jim, once again alongside the Hart brothers, found himself in the middle of wrestling's hottest story. The crowd reactions were unlike anything before. In America, they were villains who dared to speak against the USA, but crossed the border into Canada, and they were national heroes. The Anvil and his partners didn't just get cheers in Canada, they got the kind of reception usually reserved for rock stars. Every appearance turned arenas into wild parties or riot scenes, depending on which side of the border they were on. July 6, 1997, Calgary. In your house, Canadian Stampede. The stars aligned for one perfect night. In the ring stood some of wrestling's biggest names. Stone Cold Steve Austin, already becoming a legend. Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man. The Legion of Doom, powerhouses who dominated for years. Goldust, one of wrestling's most unique characters. Against them, the Hart Foundation in their hometown. The Calgary crowd that night wasn't just hot, they were nuclear. Every move by Jim and his partners brought the house down. When the Anvil unleashed his power moves, the building shook. This wasn't just another match. It was a celebration of everything the Hart Foundation stood for, everything they'd built over the years. Nobody knew it then, but this would be Jim's last dance on the big stage. If you're going to take your final bow on pay-per-view, doing it in Calgary, with family, in front of fans who treated you like royalty, that's the way to do it. The Hart Foundation's victory that night wasn't just a win. It was the perfect ending to a story that had started years ago in Stu Hart's basement, coming full circle in the city where it all began. The spotlight's glow can be hard to leave behind, but Jim, the years after his in-ring career, told a darker story than any wrestling match. When the roar of the crowd fades and the ring ropes stop bouncing, some wrestlers find the silence deafening. The Anvil was one of them. Wrestling isn't kind to bodies or minds. Years of taking bumps, throwing power slams, and living life on the road had left their mark. The physical toll was only part of the story. Like many athletes, Jim struggled to find his place in a world that no longer revolved around match times and arena schedules. The rush of performing in front of thousands isn't easy to replace. September 6, 2010 wasn't just another date on the calendar, it became a stark reminder of how far a star could fall. The charges read like a prosecutor's worst-case scenario: drug possession with intent to distribute, trafficking, burglary, grand theft. The man who once tossed anvils for sport and held championship gold was now making headlines for all the wrong reasons. The arrest painted a picture no wrestling fan wanted to see. Each charge told part of a larger story about addiction, struggle, and the desperate measures some take when the cheers stop and reality sets in. Controlled substances had replaced the adrenaline of competition. The man who once broke into matches with perfectly timed moves was now accused of breaking into buildings. This chapter of Jim's life served as a painful reminder of wrestling's darker side, how the business could lift someone to incredible heights but offer little guidance for the descent. The same intensity that made him a star in the ring was now working against him outside it, turning the Anvil's post-wrestling journey into a cautionary tale about fame's fleeting nature and the challenges of finding purpose after the final bell. The gas station incident stripped away the glamour of wrestling fame, revealing a man fighting battles far tougher than any ring match. The Anvil, who once stared down wrestling's toughest competitors, now couldn't look away from his own demons. When police arrived, they didn't find the calculated professional wrestler. He found someone lost in a haze of pills and confusion. His legendary strength now turned to desperate aggression. The courtroom in March 2012 painted a different picture than the arenas he once commanded. Instead of thousands cheering his power moves, he faced a judge's stern gaze. 6 months in jail wasn't part of any wrestling script, and his outbursts during sentencing only dug the hole deeper. Contempt charge was like watching a man who couldn't help but go for the count-out loss. Yet in the darkness, a glimmer of his wrestling family's loyalty shone through. WWE, despite all the bridges that could have been burned, didn't turn its back on one of its own. They stepped up twice, funding rehabilitation programs to help their former champion find his way back. It wasn't just business, it was recognition that behind the character of the Anvil was a human being worth saving. Those rehab attempts told a different kind of wrestling story. Not one of good guys versus bad guys, but of a real man trying to pin his own demons to the mat. Each stint represented a kick-out at 2.5, a refusal to let addiction score the final fall. The company that had given him his greatest triumphs now trying to help him achieve his most important victory over himself. In these moments, wrestling's scripted drama gave way to raw reality. The man who'd once tossed anvils for show is now trying to lift the weight of his own struggles. For fans who remembered his power and glory, these headlines hit harder than any finishing move, reminding everyone that sometimes life's toughest matches happen outside the ring. Inside a quiet Florida home in the early hours of August 13, 2018, wrestling's final bell rang for the Anvil. The scene his wife Elizabeth described to TMZ wasn't the explosive power moves fans remembered. Instead, it was hauntingly gentle. A simple trip to adjust the thermostat turned into wrestling's last unexpected twist. That odd dance-like movement Elizabeth saw wasn't part of any ring performance. Jim, who'd been taking medication for seizures, moved in a way that made his wife's heart stop. He hit the wall and dropped to the floor. She didn't hesitate. 911 call was immediate. Sometimes even the fastest responses aren't fast enough. The 4-inch gash they found told the cruel story of his final moments. The man who'd survived countless battles in the ring, been thrown around by wrestling's toughest competitors, taken down by a simple fall. At 63, the Anvil's strength couldn't save him from this last opponent. The revelation about early-stage Alzheimer's cast a shadow over even his final days. The disease that steals memories had been lurking, threatening to rob him of the very stories that made him a legend. County sheriffs ruled out foul play. That didn't make the loss any easier. Jim, father, husband, wrestler legend, had left the ring for the last time. No more anvil tosses, no more power slams, no more of that distinctive laugh that echoed through arenas. Just memories, frozen in time like photographs of a man who lived life as big as his in-ring presence. Hart legacy runs like a bright thread through wrestling's tapestry. Nowhere is it more visible than in Natalya's ring work. Every time she steps between the ropes, echoes of the Anvil live on. Same power game, those technical skills, even the way she carries herself. It's pure Hart dynasty, pure Jim spirit. Watch Natalya wrestle and you'll catch glimpses of her father. When she locks in the sharpshooter, she's not just using her Uncle Bret's move. She's honoring a family tradition that Jim helped build. The pink and black gear isn't just a fashion choice, it's a living tribute to the Hart Foundation's glory days. And her dad and uncle changed tag team wrestling forever. But it goes deeper than moves and colors. Natalya brings that same blend of power and precision that made her father special. She can throw opponents around the ring with anvil-like strength, then switch to technical wrestling that would make the Hart Dungeon proud. Like watching wrestling history evolve in real time, next generation Jim adding new chapters to the family story. In WWE's women's division, Natalya stands out not just for her skill, but her connection to wrestling royalty. Every time announcers mention her father or the Hart Foundation, keeping the Anvil's memory alive. Struggles later in life don't diminish what he built. They just make the story more human, more real. Through Natalya, Jim's influence on wrestling never really ended, it just transformed. The powerhouse who once tossed anvils for sport lives on through his daughter's power slams. The proud Hart Foundation member's spirit shows in every pink and black outfit she wears. The legacy of the Anvil didn't end on that August morning in 2018. It just found a new way to shine in the squared circle. Through the lens of cold statistics, Jim's career looks impressive enough. Those tag team titles, those headlining matches spanning decades. But wrestling isn't about numbers. It's about moments that stick in fans' memories, and the Anvil created plenty of those. That laugh, you can still hear it if you close your eyes. It wasn't just a character trait, it was Jim's exclamation point on every promo, every victory, every moment of triumph. In a business full of larger-than-life characters, he managed to stand out without needing fancy gimmicks. Just raw power, natural charisma, and that unforgettable laugh. Think back to WrestleMania 6, when victory came calling, or those legendary Hart Foundation matches rewrote what tag team wrestling could be. Each power slam, each devastating move told the story of a man who'd gone from tossing anvils at the Calgary Stampede to tossing opponents in wrestling's biggest venues. Jim's story isn't just about wrestling glory, it's about human struggle too. When the spotlight dims and the crowds go home, when the roar of thousands turns to silence, that's when some of life's toughest matches begin. His battles outside the ring remind us that even our heroes fight private wars we never see. From the Hart Dungeon to WWE stardom, from triumph to tragedy, Anvil's journey mirrors wrestling itself. Spectacular, dramatic, sometimes glorious, sometimes heartbreaking. His daughter Natalya carries his legacy forward now, proof that the stories we write in the ring can echo long after we're gone. Don't miss our documentary on Rick Rude and how his final match led to his tragic end. Like and subscribe for 100 years of luck. Until next time.